Welcome to HOA Clapback. This is what selective enforcement looks like. I am standing in my driveway in Riverstone Meadows, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, holding a single fence panel against the side of my house, and Cynthia Carter is already screaming at me from the sidewalk. She is jabbing her finger in the air and her face is red. "You are in violation of outdoor storage covenants," she yells. "That panel has been there for 10 minutes, and I have documented it. I work as a pool service technician, so I understand HOA politics better than most people because I see the same power trips at every community pool I service. I moved to Riverstone Meadows 2 years ago because the homes were affordable and close to my route, but this neighborhood is a place where everything requires a form, and the form requires another form. The HOA is Riverstone Meadows HOA Incorporated, and they treat residents like suspects during any renovation. What is at stake for me is serious. I need to keep my record clean because of background checks at work, and any lien or legal dispute with the HOA could cost me my job. The first sign of trouble was 3 months ago when I noticed the back fence rotting near the property line, and I mentioned it casually at a pool party. Cynthia overheard me and immediately told me I would need a permit, a survey, board approval, and a licensed contractor on their approved list. I laughed because I thought she was joking. She was not joking. Cynthia is the neighborhood watch liaison, which means she treats residents like suspects every single day. Her full name is Cynthia Carter, but everyone calls her Janet with no notice because she shows up unannounced to inspect things that are none of her business. She has blonde hair pulled into a bun, and today she is wearing a purple windbreaker and a red sun hat, even though it is October and cool outside. She is holding a laminated policy sheet she refuses to hand over, and she waves it at me like it is a weapon. "You signed the covenants, now you live the covenants," she says. That is her catchphrase, and I have heard it at least 4 times in the past 2 months. I set the panel down carefully and walked toward her. The panel was leaning there for 10 minutes while I went inside to grab my tape measure, I say. "It is not outdoor storage, it is a work in progress." She shakes her head hard enough that her sun hat shifts. "The covenant says any building material visible from the street for more than 15 minutes constitutes outdoor storage and requires prior written approval," she says. I check my watch. "It has been 10 minutes, I say. She smiles in a way that makes my stomach drop. "I started the timer when you brought it out of your truck," she says. "That was 22 minutes ago." I take a deep breath and remind myself that arguing on the sidewalk will not help. "I need to replace the back fence because 2 panels are rotting and the posts are leaning," I say. "I already submitted the architectural request form 3 weeks ago, and I have not heard anything back." Her smile gets wider. "The committee meets once a month and your request was incomplete," she says. "You did not include a certified survey showing the property line." "I did include a survey," I say. "It was attached to the application." She shrugs. "We have no record of that," she says. "You will need to resubmit with a new survey, a detailed site plan, contractor insurance certificates, and a timeline. The next committee meeting is in 2 weeks. I feel my jaw tighten because I know what she is doing. She is stalling. If I wait 2 weeks, the hearing she has been threatening will happen first, and she will use that to block my permit entirely. I also know that the surveyor I hired is delayed because of weather, and Cynthia is trying to rush a hearing before the line is confirmed. That is my side complication, and it is going to make everything harder. I go back inside and grab my phone. I pull up the email confirmation from the HOA management company showing that I submitted the survey 3 weeks ago, and I walk back outside. Cynthia is still standing on the sidewalk, but now she has pulled out her own phone and she is taking photos of my fence panel. I hold my phone out toward her. "Here is the receipt," I say. I submitted everything on September 10th. She does not even look at the screen. Your camera does not matter, my minutes are the truth, she says. That line is going to come back to haunt her later, but right now it just makes me angrier. I let her say my name loud, because later I wanted it on the recording. She steps closer and her voice gets louder. You think you can just do whatever you want, she says, but this is Riverstone Meadows HOA Incorporated, and we have rules. Every single homeowner agreed to the same covenants, and you do not get special treatment just because you service pools. I did not say anything about my job, I say. She waves her laminated sheet again. I know exactly who you are and what you do, she says. You drive around in that van with the logo on it and you think you understand how associations work, but you do not. You signed the covenants. Now you live the covenants. I decide to stop engaging and go back inside, but as I turn around I hear her call after me. The board hearing is scheduled for today at 6, she says. If you miss it, they plan to default vote against you. That is my time pressure, and she just said it out loud to make sure I know I am trapped. I check my watch. It is 3 in the afternoon, which gives me 3 hours to figure out a plan. I go inside and call my ally, a notary named Marcus who lives 2 streets over and has helped me organize sworn statements for other disputes in the neighborhood. He answers on the second ring. Marcus, I need your help, I say. I explain the situation and he listens without interrupting. When I finish, he says, you need to get that survey on record before the hearing, and you need to bring proof that they received it the first time. I already have the email, I say. That is not enough, he says. You need a records request response proving they hid documents unless paid bogus fees. That is my trump card, but I have not told anyone about it yet, not even Marcus. I filed a records request 2 weeks ago after Cynthia claimed the survey was missing, and I paid the bogus processing fee they demanded. The response arrived yesterday in a certified letter envelope with dirt-smudged corners, and when I opened it I found every document I had submitted, including the survey, along with a note saying the files had been archived and required a $50 retrieval fee. The note was unsigned, but the tone was pure Cynthia. I am holding that envelope as my trump card, but I am not ready to reveal it yet. Marcus tells me to meet him at his house in 30 minutes so we can review everything before the hearing. I agree and hang up. Then I grab the envelope from my desk drawer and head out. On my way to the truck, I see Cynthia talking to someone on the sidewalk. It is a mail carrier trying to get around tools and posts near the curb, and Cynthia is blocking her path while she lectures about the covenant rules. The mail carrier looks exhausted and annoyed, and when she sees me, she gives me a sympathetic look. I nod and keep walking. I drive to Marcus's house and we spend the next hour going through my documents. He helps me organize sworn statements from 2 neighbors who saw me submit the application in person at the HOA office, and he notarizes both statements on the spot. We also print out the email confirmation and attach it to the certified letter envelope. This is solid, Marcus says, but you need to be ready for them to claim the survey is invalid or outdated. I nod. The surveyor is supposed to deliver the updated boundary report today, I say. If it arrives before the hearing, I will bring it. If not, I will use the old one and argue that the line has not moved. Marcus frowns. Be careful, he says. If you go in there without the updated survey, Cynthia will use that to delay everything again. I know, I say, but I do not have a choice. I leave Marcus's house and drive back home. The surveyor's truck is parked in my driveway and I feel a wave of relief. I park on the street and jog over. The surveyor is a woman in her 50s with a clipboard and a reflective vest, and she looks frustrated. I have bad news, she says. The property line is exactly where your old survey said it was, but the HOA is claiming an easement that does not exist. She shows me the map and points to a shaded area along the back fence. They are saying this is a drainage easement and you cannot build within 3 feet of it, she says. But there is no recorded easement on file with the county, and I checked the original plat. This is a made-up rule. I feel my chest tighten because I know exactly what happened. Cynthia invented the easement to justify blocking my fence, and now she is going to use it at the hearing to make me look like I did not do my homework. The surveyor hands me a printed report with her official seal. This document proves there is no easement, she says. If they try to claim otherwise, make them produce the recorded document. I thank her and take the report inside. I now have everything I need for the hearing, but I still have not decided when to reveal the trump card. At 5:30, I drive to the HOA clubhouse for the hearing. The parking lot is half full, and I see Cynthia's car near the entrance. I grab my folder with all the documents and walk inside. The meeting room is set up with a long table at the front and rows of chairs facing it. 3 board members are seated at the table: the president, the treasurer, and Cynthia, who is listed as the compliance officer even though her official role is neighborhood watch liaison. I sit in the front row, and Marcus slides in next to me a minute later. The president calls the meeting to order and reads through the agenda. When he gets to my name, Cynthia stands up and walks to a podium on the side. She has a stack of pre-filled violation forms with boxes already checked, and she sets them down with a loud thump. This is my signature detail, and it is the 3rd time I have seen it. Once at the pool when she was filing complaints about a contractor, once in the HOA office when I submitted my application, and now here. She clears her throat and starts reading. The homeowner at 428 Maple Ridge Drive has violated multiple covenants, she says. He stored building materials in public view without approval. He failed to submit a complete application, and he ignored a stop work order issued on October 3rd. I lean forward. I never received a stop work order, I say. Cynthia does not even look at me. The order was posted on the property and documented in our files, she says. Failure to comply is grounds for immediate fines and a lien. The president frowns and looks at me. Do you have any evidence that you did not receive the order? He asks. I pull out my phone and show him the photos I took of my front door and mailbox every day for the past 2 weeks. There is no stop work notice in any of these photos, I say. Cynthia snorts. You could have removed it, she says. I shake my head. I have a doorbell camera that records continuously, I say. If someone posted a notice, it would be on video. Cynthia's face tightens and I can see her calculating. She pivots immediately. The stop work order is secondary, she says. The main issue is the incomplete application and the outdoor storage violation. I stand up and walk to the front. I submitted a complete application on September 10th, I say. I hand the president a copy of the email confirmation and the certified letter envelope. The HOA claimed the survey was missing, but when I filed a records request, they sent me every document I had submitted, including the survey. The president opens the envelope and reads the note inside. His expression shifts. This says you paid a retrieval fee, he says. Why would you need to pay a fee if the documents were never submitted? Exactly, I say. Someone archived my application to make it look incomplete, and then charged me $50 to get it back. Cynthia stands up fast enough that her chair scrapes the floor. That is a baseless accusation, she says. Our office follows standard procedures for all requests. Marcus stands up and holds out the 2 notarized statements. I have sworn statements from 2 neighbors who witnessed him submit the application in person, he says. They saw him hand the folder to the office staff, and they saw the staff log it into the system. The president takes the statements and reads them carefully. He looks at Cynthia. Do you have any explanation for this, he asks. She crosses her arms. The filing system was updated in September and some documents were moved during the transition, she says. It is possible his application was misfiled, but that does not change the fact that he violated the outdoor storage rule. I pull out the surveyor's report and hand it to the president. This is an updated boundary survey completed today, I say. It confirms that my property line is exactly where the original survey said it was, and there is no recorded easement that would prevent me from building the fence. Cynthia's face goes red. That survey is irrelevant, she says. The covenant clearly states that any structure within 3 feet of a drainage easement requires special approval. Show me the recorded easement, I say. She opens her mouth and then closes it. The president looks at her. Cynthia, do we have a recorded easement on file? He asks. She shuffles through her stack of forms. It is in the original plat, she says. I checked it last week. The surveyor checked the original plat today and there is no easement, I say. If you have a different document, I would like to see it. The room is silent for a moment, and then the president sets down the survey report and looks at Cynthia. I think we need to table this hearing until we can verify the easement claim, he says. Cynthia's voice gets louder. We cannot table this, she says. He has been in violation for weeks, and we need to enforce the rules. The president shakes his head. If there is no easement, then there is no violation, he says. I am not going to fine a homeowner based on a rule that might not exist. Cynthia slams her hand on the podium. You signed the covenants. Now you live the covenants, she says. That applies to everyone, including him. The treasurer, who has been silent this whole time, finally speaks up. Cynthia, we need to follow due process, he says. If the documents are missing or misfiled, that is our problem, not his. She turns to glare at him and I can see her losing control. This is exactly what I wanted. I let her escalate in front of witnesses so that later I could use her own words against her. Marcus leans over and whispers, now is the time. I nod and stand up again. I have one more thing, I say. I pull out my phone and open the recording app. At the beginning of this meeting, Cynthia said my camera does not matter and her minutes are the truth. I recorded that statement on my phone 3 hours ago when she confronted me on my property. I also recorded her saying she started the timer for the outdoor storage violation 22 minutes before I even brought the fence panel outside. The president looks at Cynthia. Is that true? He asks. She does not answer. I play the recording and her voice fills the room. Your camera does not matter. My minutes are the truth. I pause it and look at the board. If her minutes are the truth, then why do I have emails and sworn statements proving my application was submitted on time, I say. And if her minutes are the truth, why does the certified letter from the HOA prove that my documents were archived and held for ransom? The president stands up. This hearing is over, he says. I am going to recommend that the board conduct a full audit of the compliance office and review all recent violation cases. Cynthia, you are dismissed from this meeting. Her face goes white and then red again. You cannot dismiss me, she says. I am the compliance officer. The president points to the door. You are dismissed, he says. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more wild HOA drama. Cynthia grabs her stack of forms and storms out of the room. The door slams behind her and the sound echoes. The president sits back down and looks at me. I apologize for what you have been through, he says. We will review your application immediately and expedite approval. I nod and thank him. Then I leave with Marcus. Outside, the parking lot is dark, and Cynthia is sitting in her car with the engine running. She does not look at me as I walk past, but I can see her gripping the steering wheel hard enough that her knuckles are white. Marcus pats me on the shoulder. You handled that perfectly, he says. But this is not over. She is going to try to retaliate. I know, I say. That is why I am not done yet. The next morning, I get a call from the HOA management company. The woman on the phone sounds tired. We received a complaint log entry that was obviously written in Cynthia's voice, she says. It claims you threatened her during the hearing and that you need to be banned from amenities entirely as punishment for questioning her authority. I feel my stomach drop because this is my escalation step 1, and it is exactly what Marcus warned me about. I did not threaten her, I say. I have witnesses who can confirm that. The woman sighs. I believe you, she says. But Cynthia submitted the complaint through the official system, and it triggered an automatic review. You will receive a notice in the mail, and you will have 10 days to respond. I thank her and hang up. Then I call Marcus. He tells me to draft a written response with witness statements and to request a copy of the complaint log entry so I can prove it was falsified. I spend the rest of the day working on the response, and by the evening I have a 6-page packet with statements from Marcus, the 2 neighbors who notarized earlier, and the mail carrier who saw Cynthia blocking the sidewalk. I also include screenshots of the doorbell camera footage showing that no one posted a stop work order on my property. 2 days later, I get another call from the management company. The board has decided to drop the complaint, the woman says. They reviewed the log entry and determined it was not supported by evidence. I feel a wave of relief, but it is short-lived because she keeps talking. However, Cynthia has filed a formal request to ban you from the pool and clubhouse pending a full investigation, she says. The board is required to hold a hearing on that request within 30 days. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. This is my escalation step 2, and it is worse than I expected. If Cynthia succeeds in banning me from amenities, it will trigger a formal dispute on my record, and that could affect my background checks at work. I cannot let that happen. I call Marcus again and he agrees to help me prepare for the hearing. We meet at his house the next day and he tells me the key is to show a pattern of harassment and abuse of authority. You need to prove that she is targeting you specifically, he says. And you need to show that her actions are not about enforcing rules, but about punishing you for challenging her. I nod. I have been thinking the same thing. Over the next 2 weeks, I gather evidence. I file a records request with the city and discover that Cynthia has been calling the city with misleading complaints to slow permits and inspections. The city inspector tells me off the record that she claimed I was building without a permit, even though I had submitted the permit application weeks earlier. I also talked to 3 other homeowners in the neighborhood who have had similar problems with Cynthia. One of them, a woman named Ellen, tells me that Cynthia threatened her contractor and got him removed from the HOA-approved list after Ellen complained about a bogus violation. That is my set piece 1, a contractor blacklist moment where my builder admits Cynthia threatened him off the job. I call my builder and ask him to meet me at a coffee shop. He agrees, but he sounds nervous. When we sit down, I ask him directly if Cynthia contacted him. He looks around the coffee shop and then nods. She called me 2 weeks ago and said if I continued working on your fence, she would file a complaint with the licensing board, he says. She claimed I was operating without proper insurance, which is not true. I have full coverage and she knows it. I ask him if he is willing to put that in writing, and he hesitates. I cannot afford to get blacklisted, he says. I have 3 other jobs in this neighborhood. I understand, I say, but if you do not speak up, she is going to keep doing this to other contractors. He thinks for a minute and then agrees. I will give you a written statement, he says, but I want it kept confidential until the hearing. I thank him and leave the coffee shop with the statement in hand. That night, I draft a formal complaint against Cynthia and submit it to the HOA management company. I include the builder's statement, the city inspector's confirmation of misleading complaints, and the sworn statements from Ellen and the other homeowners. I also attached the recording of Cynthia saying her minutes are the truth, along with the certified letter proving that my documents were archived. The management company acknowledges receipt and schedules a board meeting to review the complaint. The meeting is set for 2 weeks from now, which is 1 day before the hearing on Cynthia's request to ban me from amenities. I know this is going to be close, but I also know I have enough evidence to win. In the meantime, I continue working on the fence. The board approved my application the day after the first hearing, and I hired a new contractor to finish the job. The new contractor is efficient and professional, and he completes the work in 3 days. The fence looks great, and the survey confirms that it is fully compliant with all setback rules. On the day the fence is finished, Cynthia drives past my house twice. The second time, she slows down and takes photos with her phone. I wave at her from the driveway and she speeds off. That evening, I get a notice in the mail claiming that the fence violates the covenant because the posts are too tall. I measure the posts and confirm they are exactly 6 feet, which is the maximum allowed height. I take photos and email them to the management company with a note saying this is the 4th false violation in 3 weeks. The management company responds within an hour and says they are forwarding my email to the board. The next week, I attend the board meeting to review my complaint against Cynthia. The meeting is held in the same room as the first hearing, and this time the room is packed. At least a dozen homeowners show up to support me, including Ellen, Marcus, and the 2 neighbors who notarized statements earlier. Cynthia is sitting in the back row with her arms crossed, and she does not make eye contact with anyone. The president calls the meeting to order and reads through the complaint. He summarizes the evidence and then asks Cynthia if she has a response. She stands up and walks to the podium. Everything I did was within my authority as compliance officer, she says. I followed the covenants and enforced the rules fairly. The president shakes his head. The evidence shows that you archived his application to make it look incomplete, he says. You also called the city with misleading complaints and threatened a licensed contractor. How is that enforcing the rules fairly? Cynthia's face goes red. I was protecting the community, she says. He was building without proper approval. The president holds up the email confirmation. He submitted the application on September 10th, he says. You archived it on September 15th. That is not a filing error. That is deliberate obstruction. Cynthia opens her mouth to respond, but the treasurer cuts her off. We also received complaints from 3 other homeowners, he says. They all describe the same pattern: false violations, archived applications, and threats against contractors. This is not about enforcing rules. This is about harassment. Cynthia slams her hand on the podium. You cannot let him turn this board against me, she says. I have served this community for 5 years and I have never had a complaint until he moved in. The president stands up. That is not true, he says. We have complaints going back 2 years, but they were all dismissed because you were the one reviewing them. Cynthia's face goes pale and I can see her realizing that she has been caught. The president continues. The board has voted to remove you from the compliance officer position, effective immediately, he says. We are also referring your conduct to the management company for a formal investigation. Cynthia grabs her laminated policy sheet and storms toward the door, but before she leaves, she turns and points at me. This is not over, she says. You signed the covenants, now you live the covenants. The door slams behind her and the room erupts in applause. After the meeting, Marcus and I walk out to the parking lot together. You did it, he says. She is done. I nod, but I know he is right that this is not over. Cynthia still has the hearing scheduled to ban me from amenities, and she is not going to let that go without a fight. The hearing is tomorrow, and I need to be ready. That night, I review all my evidence one more time and I add one final piece, the twist. 2 days ago, I received an email from the management company with a subject line that said meeting minutes discrepancy. The email explained that during a routine audit, they discovered that the minutes from the September board meeting had been edited after the meeting, and the original file was recovered from the backup server. The original minutes showed that my application was discussed and approved, but the edited version claimed it was tabled pending additional information. The email included both versions as attachments, and the metadata showed that the edited version was saved from Cynthia's computer. This is the smoking gun, and I am going to use it at the hearing tomorrow. The hearing is scheduled for 6 in the evening, and I arrive early to set up. The room is smaller this time, and only the board president and treasurer are present. Cynthia is already sitting at the front with another stack of pre-filled violation forms. She does not look at me when I walk in. The president calls the hearing to order and asks Cynthia to present her case. She stands up and starts reading from a prepared statement. The homeowner at 428 Maple Ridge Drive has repeatedly violated covenants and disrupted the community, she says. He has ignored warnings, filed baseless complaints, and created a hostile environment. I recommend that he be banned from all amenities until he demonstrates compliance and respect for HOA authority. The president looks at me. "Do you have a response?" he asks. I stand up and walk to the front. I pull out a printed copy of the original meeting minutes and the edited version. "These are the minutes from the September board meeting," I say. The original version shows that my application was approved, but the edited version claims it was tabled. The edited version was saved from Cynthia's computer after the meeting. I hand both documents to the president, and he reads them carefully. His expression hardens. Cynthia stands up fast. "Those minutes were corrected because of a transcription error," she says. The president shakes his head. "The metadata shows the file was edited 3 days after the meeting," he says, "and the changes were not corrections, they were alterations. You changed the outcome of a board vote." Cynthia's face goes red. "I was clarifying the record," she says. The president sets down the documents. "You were falsifying the record," he says. "This is a serious violation of your fiduciary duty as a board member. I am recommending that the board pursue legal action." Cynthia's voice gets shrill. "You cannot do this," she says. "I have done nothing wrong." The treasurer speaks up. "We have enough evidence to show a pattern of misconduct," he says. "This hearing is over. The board rejects your request to ban this homeowner, and we are moving forward with a formal investigation." Cynthia grabs her stack of forms and storms out of the room. The door slams and I hear her car start in the parking lot. The president looks at me. "I apologize again for what you have been through," he says. "We will be making changes to ensure this does not happen to anyone else." I thank him and leave. Outside, Marcus is waiting in his truck. He rolls down the window. "How did it go?" he asks. "It is over," I say. "She is done." He grins. "Good," he says. "Now you can finish your fence in peace." I laugh and get in my truck. On the way home, I stop at the hardware store to pick up a new stringline spool because the old one snapped during the installation. When I get back to the house, I see a car parked in front of my driveway. It is Cynthia's car, and she is standing on my front porch with an inspection crew in reflective vests. This is my final showdown location, and I am ready. I park on the street and walk up the driveway. Cynthia sees me and steps forward. "I am here to conduct a final inspection," she says. "The board may have removed me from the compliance officer position, but I am still a homeowner, and I have the right to verify that your fence meets covenant standards." I shake my head. You do not have the authority to conduct inspections, I say, and you do not have the right to bring a crew onto my property without permission. She crosses her arms. I am not on your property, I am on the porch, she says. And these gentlemen are licensed inspectors hired by the HOA. I look at the two men in reflective vests, and they both look uncomfortable. One of them steps forward. We were hired to inspect the fence, he says, but we were told the homeowner would be notified in advance. I was not notified, I say, and the board already approved the fence. The inspector nods. Then we are done here, he says. He turns to Cynthia. We cannot proceed without homeowner consent. She glares at him. You are under contract with the HOA, she says. You do what I tell you. The inspector shakes his head. We are under contract with the management company, not with you, he says. And we follow the rules. He and the other inspector walk back to their truck and drive away. Cynthia stands on the porch for a moment, and I can see her calculating. She pulls out her phone and starts recording. You are preventing a lawful inspection, she says into the camera. I am documenting this for the board. I pull out my own phone and start recording. You do not have the authority to conduct inspections, I say. You were removed from the compliance officer position yesterday, and you are trespassing on my property. She lowers her phone. I am not trespassing, she says. I am standing on the porch. I step closer. The porch is part of my property, I say. You need to leave. She does not move. You signed the covenants, now you live the covenants, she says. I shake my head. That line does not work anymore, I say. The board has already ruled in my favor, and your authority is gone. She steps off the porch and walks toward the sidewalk, but before she leaves, she turns and points at me. This is not over, she says. You think you won, but I will find another violation. I will keep watching, and I will keep filing complaints. I stop recording and put my phone in my pocket. Actually, it is over, I say. I filed a formal request with the board to use a records request response proving they hid documents unless paid bogus fees, and I used it to request a temporary order to stop enforcement while the dispute is reviewed. The order was granted this morning, and it bars you from filing any complaints against me for the next 6 months. Her face goes white. You cannot do that, she says. I already did, I say. And if you violate the order, the board will pursue legal action. Cynthia stands on the sidewalk for a long moment, and then she gets in her car and drives away. I watch her taillights disappear around the corner, and then I go inside. That night, I get an email from the management company confirming that the HOA has retracted the fence violation in writing. The email includes a formal apology and a refund of all fines and fees I paid during the dispute. I forward the email to Marcus, and he replies with a thumbs up emoji. The next day, I get a call from Ellen, the homeowner who told me about Cynthia threatening her contractor. She says she is organizing a petition to recall Cynthia from the board entirely, and she wants to know if I will sign. I agree, and she tells me she is going door to door to collect signatures. 2 days later, I am working in the yard when Ellen walks up my driveway with a clipboard. She has a stack of signed petition sheets, and she looks excited. I have 60 signatures, she says. That is more than enough to trigger a recall vote. I sign the petition and she thanks me. Then she heads to the next house. I watch her knock on the door, and Cynthia answers. Ellen holds out the clipboard and starts explaining the petition, but Cynthia cuts her off. I am not interested, she says. Ellen keeps talking, and Cynthia's voice gets louder. You are harassing me, she says. I am calling the police. Ellen does not back down. This is a legal petition, she says. You cannot stop homeowners from organizing. Cynthia slams the door, and Ellen walks back to my yard. She looks frustrated but determined. "That went about as well as I expected," she says. I laugh. "You did great," I say. "Keep going." Ellen nods and heads to the next house. Over the next 2 weeks, the petition gains momentum. Ellen collects more than 100 signatures, and the board schedules a special meeting to vote on the recall. The meeting is held on a Saturday afternoon, and the room is packed with homeowners. Cynthia is sitting in the front row with her laminated policy sheet on her lap, and she does not look at anyone. The president calls the meeting to order and explains the recall process. "A recall requires a 2/3 vote of all homeowners present," he says. "We will take a roll call vote, and each homeowner will have the opportunity to explain their decision. The vote takes almost an hour, and when it is finished, the president announces the results. The recall passes with 78% in favor," he says. Cynthia Carter is removed from the board effective immediately. The room erupts in applause, and Cynthia stands up and walks toward the door. Before she leaves, she turns and looks at me. Her face is red and her eyes are wet, but she does not say anything. She just leaves. After the meeting, the board holds an emergency session to elect a new compliance officer. They choose a retired teacher named Margaret, who has lived in the neighborhood for 20 years and has a reputation for fairness. Margaret's first act as compliance officer is to review all active violation cases and dismiss the ones that were filed by Cynthia without proper evidence. She also implements a new policy requiring all violations to be reviewed by at least 2 board members before a notice is issued. The changes are announced at the next board meeting, and the homeowners give Margaret a standing ovation. I feel a wave of relief because I know the neighborhood is finally moving in the right direction. 2 weeks later, I am working in the yard when I hear a car pull up. I look up and see a black sedan with a county government seal on the door. A woman in a suit gets out and walks toward me. "Are you the homeowner at 428 Maple Ridge Drive?" she asks. I nod. "I am with the county auditor's office," she says. "We received a complaint about financial irregularities at the Riverstone Meadows HOA, and we are conducting an investigation." I feel my chest tighten because I did not file a complaint with the county, which means someone else did. The woman hands me a business card. "If you have any information about HOA fees, fines, or expenditures that seem unusual, please contact me," she says. I take the card and thank her. Then she gets back in the car and drives away. That evening, I get a call from Marcus. "Did you hear about the county investigation?" he asks. "I did," I say. "Do you know who filed the complaint?" Marcus laughs. "It was Ellen," he says. "She found a discrepancy in the HOA budget and reported it to the county. Apparently, Cynthia was charging bogus processing fees for records requests and pocketing the money." I feel a surge of satisfaction because this is the final piece of the puzzle. Cynthia was not just abusing her authority, she was stealing from the HOA. The county investigation takes 3 months, and when it is finished, the auditor's office releases a report confirming that Cynthia embezzled more than $15,000 over 2 years. The report recommends criminal charges, and the HOA board votes to refer the case to the district attorney. Cynthia is arrested 2 weeks later, and the story makes the local news. I watch the news report with Marcus, and we both laugh when the anchor describes Cynthia as a former HOA compliance officer accused of financial crimes. "That is karma," Marcus says. I nod. "It really is," I say. The board holds a special meeting to discuss the embezzlement, and they announce that the HOA will be suing Cynthia to recover the stolen funds. They also implement new financial controls to prevent future abuse. The changes include quarterly audits, dual approval for all expenditures over $500, and a whistleblower hotline for homeowners to report concerns anonymously. The homeowners vote to approve the changes, and the meeting ends with another standing ovation for Margaret. In the months that follow, the neighborhood starts to feel different. Homeowners who were afraid to challenge the HOA before are now filing legitimate complaints and getting fair resolutions. Margaret reviews every case carefully and works with homeowners to find solutions instead of just issuing fines. The contractor blacklist is abolished, and builders start taking jobs in Riverstone Meadows again. My fence is still standing, and it looks great. The posts are straight, the panels are level, and the survey confirms it is fully compliant. I have not received a single violation notice since Cynthia was removed from the board. One afternoon, I am at the pool servicing the filters when I see Cynthia's house for sale. The sign in the yard says sold, and I feel a wave of relief. A week later, I see a moving truck parked in her driveway, and by the end of the day, the house is empty. I never see her again. Ellen stops by my house that evening with a bottle of wine. She is gone, she says. I heard she moved to another state. I open the wine and pour 2 glasses. Good riddance, I say. Ellen raises her glass. To fair enforcement, she says. I clink my glass against hers. To fair enforcement, I say. The final board meeting of the year is held in December, and the president uses the opportunity to thank everyone who helped expose the corruption and reform the HOA. He specifically mentions Ellen, Marcus, and me by name, and the room erupts in applause. After the meeting, the board votes to censure Cynthia in public, strip her committee powers retroactively, and ban her from contacting homeowners outside official meetings. The vote is unanimous, and the board issues a written statement explaining the decision. The statement is posted on the HOA website and mailed to every homeowner in the neighborhood. It is a public humiliation, and it is exactly what she deserves. A few weeks later, I am at the hardware store picking up supplies when I run into the contractor who gave me the written statement about Cynthia threatening him. He sees me and walks over. I heard what happened, he says. Thank you for standing up to her. I nod. I could not have done it without your help, I say. He smiles. I am back on the HOA approved list, he says. Margaret called me last week and apologized for what happened. I feel a surge of pride, because this is what winning looks like, not just fixing my own problem, but making the system better for everyone. The contractor and I shake hands, and he heads to the checkout. That evening, I sit on my back porch and look at the fence. It is solid, level, and exactly where it is supposed to be. The survey stakes are still in the ground, and I decide to leave them there as a reminder. Marcus stops by with a 6-pack, and we sit on the porch and talk about everything that happened. You changed this neighborhood, he says. I shake my head. We changed it, I say. You, me, Ellen, and everyone else who refused to let her get away with it. Marcus raises his beer. To teamwork, he says. I clink my bottle against his. To teamwork, I say. The next day, I get an email from the management company with the final settlement. The HOA has agreed to refund all fines, fees, and processing charges I paid during the dispute, and they have issued a formal apology. The email also includes a copy of the written retraction of the fence violation, signed by the board president and notarized by Marcus. I print the email and put it in a folder with all the other documents from the case. I label the folder Cynthia and file it away. I do not expect to need it again, but I want to keep it just in case. A few months later, I am at a neighborhood cookout when Ellen walks over with a big smile. Guess what, she says. The county auditor recovered all the stolen funds, and the HOA is using the money to upgrade the pool and clubhouse. I laugh. That is perfect, I say. Ellen nods. Margaret also announced that the HOA is hiring a professional management company to handle compliance, she says. No more volunteer enforcers. I feel a wave of relief, because this is the final piece of the reform. taking enforcement out of the hands of power-hungry volunteers and putting it in the hands of professionals who are accountable. The cookout goes late into the evening, and by the time I head home, I feel more connected to the neighborhood than I have in years. The fear and tension that Cynthia created are gone, and people are starting to enjoy living here again. I walk back to my house and sit on the porch. The fence is still standing, and it looks even better now that the wood is weathered a bit. I think about everything that happened, and I realize that the real victory was not just winning the dispute, it was changing the culture. Cynthia spent years abusing her authority and making people afraid, but in the end, the homeowners fought back and won. A year after the dispute ended, I am working at a pool in another HOA community when I overhear two homeowners talking about a compliance officer who is harassing them. I walk over and introduce myself. I went through something similar, I say. I explain what happened with Cynthia and how we fought back. The homeowners listen carefully, and when I finish, they look hopeful. "Do you think we can do the same thing?" one of them asks. I nod. "Absolutely," I say. "You just need to document everything, get organized, and refuse to back down." I give them my phone number and tell them to call if they need help. They thank me and I head back to work. As I drive home that evening, I think about how many people are dealing with the same problems I faced, and I feel a responsibility to help. The fight against HOA abuse does not end with one victory. It is an ongoing effort to hold these organizations accountable and protect homeowners from people like Cynthia. The next time I see Marcus, I tell him about the conversation at the pool. He grins. "You are becoming an activist," he says. I laugh. "I just do not want anyone else to go through what I went through," I say. Marcus nods. "That is what makes you an activist," he says. "The good kind." We sit on my porch and talk about the future. Marcus tells me he is thinking about running for the HOA board in the next election, and I encourage him. "You would be great," I say. He shrugs. "Maybe," he says. "But I am going to need your help." I promise to support him, and we shake hands. A few weeks later, the HOA holds its annual election, and Marcus runs for a board seat. He wins by a landslide, and he is sworn in at the next meeting. His first act as a board member is to propose a homeowner bill of rights that guarantees due process, transparency, and accountability in all HOA enforcement actions. The board votes to adopt the bill, and it is added to the covenants. The homeowners celebrate the change, and Margaret sends out a newsletter explaining the new rights and how they will be enforced. I read the newsletter and feel a sense of pride because this is the legacy of the fight, not just fixing one problem, but creating a system that protects everyone. One afternoon, I am sitting on the porch when a car pulls up and a woman gets out. She looks familiar, but I cannot place her at first. Then I realize it is the mail carrier who tried to get around Cynthia's tools and post near the curb. She walks up the driveway and hands me a package. "I just wanted to say thank you," she says. "What you did with Cynthia made my job a lot easier." I smile. "I am glad," I say. She nods. "A lot of us were watching," she says, "and we were rooting for you." She gets back in her truck and drives away, and I feel a wave of gratitude. The fight was never just about me. It was about everyone who was tired of being bullied and wanted things to change. That evening, I get a call from Ellen. She tells me the HOA has scheduled a community meeting to discuss long-term goals and priorities, and she wants me to speak about the importance of fair enforcement. I agree, and a week later I stand in front of a packed room and tell my story. I talk about the fear, the frustration, and the anger I felt when Cynthia targeted me. And I talk about the relief and satisfaction I felt when we won. I also talk about the responsibility we all have to hold the HOA accountable and make sure no one else goes through the same thing. When I finish, The room gives me a standing ovation, and several people come up afterward to thank me. One of them is a new homeowner who just moved in last month. "I heard about what happened," he says. "It is one of the reasons I bought here." I knew the HOA had been reformed and that people were willing to fight for what is right. I shake his hand and thank him, and I feel a sense of hope for the future. The final moment of satisfaction comes 6 months later when I receive a certified letter from the county district attorney. The letter explains that Cynthia pleaded guilty to embezzlement and was sentenced to probation and restitution. She is required to repay the full amount she stole, plus interest, and she is banned from serving on any HOA board in the county for 10 years. I read the letter twice, and then I call Marcus. "It is official," I say. "She is done." Marcus laughs. "That is the best news I have heard all year," he says. We celebrate that evening with Ellen and a few other homeowners, and we toast to justice, fairness, and the power of people who refuse to back down. As I sit on my porch that night, I think about the moment when Cynthia stood on my sidewalk and yelled at me for holding a fence panel. I think about how angry and helpless I felt, and I think about how far we have come since then. The fence is still standing, the neighborhood is stronger, and Cynthia is gone. The fight was hard, but it was worth it, and if I had to do it all over again, I would not change a thing. A few weeks later, I am at the pool when I overhear a conversation between two new homeowners. They are talking about the HOA and how fair and transparent it is now. One of them mentions my name and says I am the reason things changed. I do not correct them, because in a way it is true. But I also know that I could not have done it alone. It took Marcus, Ellen, the contractor, the surveyor, the mail carrier, and dozens of other people who were willing to stand up and say enough. That is the real lesson of this story. Change does not come from one person. It comes from a community that refuses to accept abuse and demands better. One evening, Marcus stops by with a grin on his face. "I have something to show you," he says. He hands me a printed document with the HOA logo at the top. It is the new enforcement policy, and it includes a section titled Homeowner Protections. The section lists all the rights we fought for, including the right to due process, the right to review all evidence, and the right to appeal any decision. At the bottom of the page, there is a note. This policy was inspired by the case of 428 Maple Ridge Drive and the efforts of homeowners who refused to accept unfair treatment. I read the note and feel my throat tighten. "This is it," I say. "This is what we were fighting for." Marcus nods. "And it is permanent," he says. "No one can take it away." We sit on the porch and talk late into the night, and when Marcus leaves, I sit alone and look at the fence. It is more than just a fence now. It is a symbol of what happens when people stand up for what is right. A year later, I am invited to speak at a regional HOA conference about enforcement reform. I stand in front of a room full of board members and homeowners and tell my story. I talk about Cynthia's abuse, the fight to expose her, and the reforms we implemented. I also talk about the importance of transparency, accountability, and fairness in HOA governance. When I finish, the room gives me a standing ovation, and several people come up afterward to ask for advice. I spend the next hour answering questions and sharing strategies, and by the end of the day I feel exhausted but fulfilled. The fight against HOA abuse is bigger than one neighborhood, and I am proud to be part of the solution. The final chapter of this story comes 2 years after the dispute ended. I am sitting on my porch when I see a familiar car drive slowly past my house. It is Cynthia's old car, but someone else is driving it now. I watch the car disappear around the corner, and I realize that Cynthia is truly gone. The neighborhood has moved on, the reforms are in place, and people are living their lives without fear. I think about the moment when she stood on my sidewalk and said, You sign the covenants. Now you live the covenants. I think about how wrong she was, because the covenants are not a weapon to be used against homeowners. They are a set of rules designed to protect the community. And when those rules are abused, it is the responsibility of every homeowner to fight back and demand accountability. I finish my coffee and head inside. The fence is still standing. The yard is quiet, and the neighborhood is at peace. The fight was hard, but it was worth it. And if anyone ever asks me what I learned from the experience, I will tell them this: never back down, never give up, and never let anyone tell you that you do not have the right to stand up for yourself. Because in the end, the people who abuse power only win if we let them. And we did not let them. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.